How many years did I put myself on the back shelf? How many years did I lend all of my energy to others and in return gave none back to me? For the first time, I could actually see what I was holding. And I thought to myself how rare it is to actually be held in return, because at that time, that was not my reality. Welcome to Reweaving Systems from Nervous to Regulated. I'm Jana Shalom, educator, system weaver, and our full-time master regulator. This is not a podcast. This is an attunement lab. Here we move through a living sequence, a truth, a pause, a moment of bracing, and a breath that brings us back. We name the nervous system, Shalom, as companion. We name survival responses as intelligent. And we open the sanctuary door from the inside. Nothing needs fixing. Welcome to the sanctuary. Let the weaving begin. This is Reweaving Systems from Nervous to Regulated. I'm Jana Shalom. You're listening to Season 1, Arc 3, the final segment of the Sanctuary, the return of perception. This is the last quarter moon and the final episode in Season 1. This episode is called What Becomes Visible When Survival Loosens. As we began this season, we started with a simple question. What happens when survival becomes the place we live from? Together, we've spent months exploring this question. We've looked at the type of meanings it creates. We looked at the type of conclusions that can emerge. And we looked at ways our perception narrows around what feels necessary. And all of that was shaped by survival. Little by little, we've been following a thread. And this thread has not been about fixing ourselves. The thread has been about seeing clearly, seeing what survival asked us to believe, seeing what survival taught us to carry, and seeing how survival organized our attention. It organized our urgency, and it organized our sense of belonging. And perhaps most importantly, it organized the lens in which we see patterns in our life. All of this emerged from real experiences, real conditions, real lives. As I've been reflecting on everything we've explored together, I keep finding myself returning to one particular season in my own life. A season when everything became too heavy to continue carrying in the same way. A season where burnout brought me to a full stop. And strangely enough, it was during that season something else became visible. I was searching for answers, and for the very first time and for a very long time, I finally had capacity to see those answers. Because during this season of my life, I spent a lot of time sitting beneath the maple tree in my backyard. At that time, I didn't think I would call it anything significant because I wasn't journaling and I wasn't trying to figure out my life. I wasn't trying to move through a process. In fact, I was pretty numb and I was simply just sitting there. But looking back at it now, what I realize is something important happened during those afternoons underneath that tree. For the very first time, I had capacity to see because everything else disappeared except my responsibilities. This was the first time in my life where if I did not absolutely have to do it, I didn't do it. I set it down. And what remained was only what I must do. And in that space, this is where I began to realize, wait a minute, survival has really been leading me. prior to that, I was not able to look at it because survival was too busy telling me what to do and what to see and how to think. This is the space where truth is ready to enter our awareness. How many years had I spent anticipating, planning, remembering, preparing, adjusting, and accommodating? How many years did I put myself on the back shelf? How many years did I lend all of my energy to others and in return gave none back to me? For the first time, I could actually see what I was holding. And I thought to myself, how rare it is to actually be held in return, because at that time that was not my reality. And while I didn't connect the weight of it then, I connect the weight of it now. I had developed hyper independence, a form of carrying everything that felt familiar because I was remarkably good at it. And it was simply something I just structured my life around. But what ended up happening is it became what I do, and it became expected of me. And I think this is an assumption that is important for us to clear up. Just because we can hold something doesn't mean we should. What became clear is what was expected of me was being assumed that I could accomplish by everyone else. Yet sitting beneath that maple tree, I found myself noticing something I hadn't fully seen before. Their expectations carried a large cost. And for the first time, I was allowing myself to acknowledge this. Exhaustion felt familiar. Grief was a surprise. I was surprised. Wait a minute. I kind of feel sad about this. I feel sad I've been carrying everything for so long. There was no crisis. There was no big collapse. It was more like a series of realizations. A series of realizations that my constant effort, energy, attention, and devotion to keeping everything moving had become my identity. And in this identity, it was almost like I taught people, no, I don't need your help. I'll do it myself. The grief wasn't that I was judging myself for any of this. The grief was the fact that I've carried it for so long. And that was the heavy part. That was the ache inside me. Like, why did it take so long for this to become visible? And why did I have to pretend like this is what it meant to live a full life? And perhaps this is the part that happens when survival finally begins to loosen. Because I don't think this part can come without the realization of what has been happening underneath these survival structures. But I can tell you what happened underneath that tree. Something became very clear that I had not yet ever considered. And what became clear was that this constant tracking, carrying, anticipating, when that released, more capacity returned. My awareness widened, and I ended up having a larger ability to perceive more of what was happening around me. And I wasn't really expecting that. As capacity slowly began to return, another question started appearing. What happens when something is carried with us? Many of us know how to carry something alone. We know how to remember everything, plan it, help it, water it to help it grow, all of the conditions it needs. We can walk through all of those things. However, have we ever held something in a shared capacity? And what I realized is that my survival strategies took away collaboration and mutuality and replaced it with this hyper individualistic, individually motivated persona, and one that was not very fulfilling. It's nice to be wanted, but that usefulness that I provided never led into belonging. So here I realize I've been holding it all together. I've been helping. I've been showing up. And when I widened my landscape, I realized I've created this out of lack of support, out of lack of consideration, and out of lack of mutual care and holding from another person. These experiences have existed for a long time, yet this was the first time I was actually giving it attention. And perhaps the most meaningful things that became visible for myself was, wait a minute, this pattern feels very familiar to me, yet it doesn't nourish me. What became present was like, wait a minute, I desire these things, yet I consistently pick these things. And as that landscape widened, what came into view was a little less of the experience and more remembering of, wait a minute, what actually lights me up? What actually fulfills me? What actually brings me joy? I had not spent time asking any of those questions because my lens was so focused on what was needed out of me. I never asked, what do I actually need? Now, when that voice of urgency comes through, I can name it right away. I can also name the fact that I want to respond right away because that was the familiar survival response. It takes effort for me not to respond right away. And I think naming that is really important as we begin to unravel the knot that survival has raveled itself into. Understanding that experiences can contain our wants and our desires. And honestly, they really should if we're living a life that's truly authentic to us and not just a life shaped by survival for other people's acceptance. As I think back to those afternoons beneath that maple tree, I can now see something that was so precious during that time. Space. Space to notice, to feel, to see. Space to allow grief to become visible. Space for relief to pour through. Space to recognize, hey, this feels joyful, this feels connected, this feels like my truth. Space to connect with my children, to enjoy their laughter, to connect with myself. Much of it had been present for a long time, but it was buried under survival. When my capacity after burnout began to return, so much more life entered awareness. Because this is the thing about burnout. When you're on the bottom of the ground and there's nowhere else lower to go, that is the space where we can let go of things. Because it's like, I'm already as low as I can go. Might as well let some things go. And in that letting go, capacity returns. And as I stood up from burnout, I realized I have to be really conscious about what patterns I choose to bring with me and what I need to leave here on the floor. In the beginning, we started noticing survival. We noticed how it organized our attention, how it shaped meaning for us, how it taught us where to look, how it influenced what became visible in our lives. And here, at the edge of the sanctuary, another recognition emerges. Life has always been larger than the portions we are carrying. It's larger than urgency, it's larger than responsibility, and it's larger than necessity. And as our attention widens, more of the landscape is now in our view. None of this was ever meant to be absent. But there were several parts that we were not able to occupy because survival didn't allow us to notice it. And perhaps the restoration of our perception begins here. Being able to see a little bit more of what's been here all along. And with that, our last quarter moon weaving for today has come to a close. which means season 1, the sanctuary, has also come to a close. And as we enter into season 2, under the next new moon, something opens. More of the landscape is in view. Survival helped us find our way here. Curiosity is what's going to help us continue. Throughout this season, we have spent time inside the sanctuary, learning to notice, learning to see, learning to name, and learning to recognize the ways survival has shaped our attention, our meaning, our perception, and our identity. And now another threshold appears, because seeing is its own kind of beginning. Beyond the sanctuary waits the bridge, which we will meet in season 2, a place where our perception begins meeting our practice, and where what has become visible begins shaping how we choose to move. We will walk this together. The path is becoming visible, and until then, the loom quiets, the thread holds, and the weaving rests. The bridge awaits.